John, let's get right to it. You were on the scene Wednesday.
Yes, I was there, Jason. And one thing I can say from what I've seen from the sideline being there is that I know you and a lot of others had said Caitlin Clark got benched. She did not get benched. Before Caitlin Clark came into the game to start of the game, she was the last one out of the tunnel. She was coming into the game with the trainers. Everybody else was already on the bench. Clear indicator to me, she might have had an issue before.
Jon was courtside Wednesday night when it happened. Last one out of the tunnel, walking in with trainers while her teammates were already on the bench. Then the second half, back to the locker room alone, returns with a back brace, sits down. Stephanie White calls her name. She removes the brace and checks back in. But here's what nobody's talking about. The body language. The timeline. The 12-minute gap before anyone explained where the league's biggest star had gone.
On footage, barely touches her teammate, immediately walks off and leaves. No one said anything to her. It looked funky. The whole situation looked funky because when Caitlin Clark did turn that ball over, that's what even made me start filming because I'm like, dang, Caitlin looked real mad. She looked like there's something going on there. It was something cooking there. So I'm like, well, let me whip it out. Let me film. And Caitlin sat down. Nobody said nothing to her. She just sat down, looked off into space. And Breon January comes in, do the huddle. Now she stands up and she looked at, like now, what you're playing, she looked at, something was off. Something was off. Something was definitely off.
Watch this sequence carefully. Caitlin turns the ball over, doesn't get back on defense. Stephanie White jumps up, calls timeout immediately. Caitlin's sitting on the bench with the players who are returning to the game, sitting next to Lexi Hall like she always does. Then Stephanie walks in, points to Raven Johnson. Raven replaces Caitlin, and look at her face. That's not injury, that's dejection. She barely puts her hand in the huddle when they break. Now here's what makes this complicated. There's clearly a back issue. She's been listed as probable all season. We saw her fall and reach for her back on a closeout earlier in the game. She came into the season wearing the back brace. So yes, the injury is real. But the injury doesn't explain everything that happened Wednesday night.
Of when the Fever PR, when it talked to Amber Cox and Kelly, which is the GM and the president, walks over to the USA Network reporter to inform them. It was a very long stretch there. That's why I cannot rule out that she possibly felt the type of way. We cannot rule that out based on the footage dealing with the whole back thing. Now, but we cannot rule out that her back's not messed up. We just can't.
I do think her back is messed up. I saw it in the game where she fell to the ground and reached for her back on the closeout. She's listed as probable. She came into the season. She's been wearing the back. Yes, I'm very much aware she's been fighting the back issue all this season. But I feel real confident, and Charles has been in a lot of these situations as a basketball coach at the highest level of college basketball.
Charles has been coaching at the highest level of college basketball for decades, and he's calling it exactly like he sees it. If your star player says, "My back hurts, I can't go," the first thing any coach does, any coach in America at any level, is turn to the trainer, check them out. Take them to the baseline, take them to the locker room, do something. But for a full minute and a half timeout, there was no treatment. Visually, fans could see it. No trainer checking on her. No conversation about the injury. Nothing. That's not how it works when Caitlin Clark says she's hurt. The trainer would hear it. Teammates would call the trainer over. The coach would demand someone check on her. This had nothing to do with injury in that moment.
Early on in coaching, hey, don't try to make something up. Don't try to make it more than what it is. Trust your eyes. It is what it is. And I heard you breaking the video down on the internet the other night, and you were right from that back part. And when you look at the front part, hey, listen, Caitlin Clark goes in and she sits down with the 5 girls who's on the court. She sits down. She's clearly intending on going back into the game. It's not until Stephanie White comes back into the huddle and says, "Raven, get her." And that's when she gets up and goes.
Here's the other tell. If it's just the ongoing back issue that's been bothering her all season, she comes back to the bench at some point during the game. Maybe in street clothes, maybe in full sweats, but she's out there supporting her teammates. That's what stars do. That's what Caitlin Clark has always done. Instead, she never returned to the bench at all. And from a television perspective, you cannot go 12 minutes without telling anyone that Caitlin Clark has left the arena. 12 minutes of silence while Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Caitlin Clark just disappears. Tomika Catchings didn't address it. The sideline reporter Paris Lawson didn't address it. Someone got in their earpiece and said, "Don't talk about this." We don't have a good explanation yet. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Her all season when she doesn't return to the bench at all. And then I'm telling you, the 12-minute gap from a television perspective, John, you can't go 12 minutes not telling anybody that Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, Caitlin Clark has left the game, left the arena area. You have to give an explanation. You have to show interest. If Tomika Catchings had just said, "Hey, where's Caitlin Clark? We got Paris Lawson, our sideline reporter, is checking to find out what's going on with Paris Lawson." That should have been said. That leads me to think someone got in their earpiece and said, "Hey, don't address this. We don't know what's going on with Caitlin Clark. The Fever don't have a good explanation." And that's why it took so long. It was
now Amber Cox. So in this whole 12-minute break where they're like nothing, because Amber Cox gets up out of her seat immediately, like 30 seconds after Caitlin Clark walks to the back, she looks over across the bench like somebody like signals something to her. She gets up. This is the general manager now. She walks in the locker room. She was in there a good, I would say, 10 minutes. Comes back out the locker room, talk to the president. Then the president, which is Kelly, she looks over to the PR lady, signal her to come back her way. She talks to her. Next thing we know, she walks over to the USA Network reporter, and then the world finds out exactly what has happened to Caitlin Clark.
Now watch what happened during those 12 minutes. 30 seconds after Caitlin walks to the back, Amber Cox, the general manager, gets up from her seat. She looks across the bench like someone signaled her. She walks into the locker room. She's in there for 10 minutes. Comes back out, talks to Kelly Kraskopf, the team president. Kelly looks over, signals the PR person to come back. They have a conversation. Then the PR person walks over to the USA Network reporter, and that's when the world finds out what happened to Caitlin Clark. You don't see the GM and the president leave their courtside seats to go address an injured player. That's not protocol. They were back there trying to manage a situation. Maybe Caitlin's on the phone with her agent saying, "I told you this situation is untenable. When's the trade happening?" Maybe she's telling them, "This woman pulled me from the game. I've had it." We don't know exactly what was said, but we know they needed 10 minutes to figure out what to tell the media. And when they finally did, it was the simplest possible explanation. Back injury, out indefinitely.
Back out there, this woman done pulled me from the game. I've had it. I've told y'all I've had it. When's this trade happening? Caitlin Clark's probably on the phone with her agent. I told y'all this situation's untenable. They're trying to put out a fire, and then they say, Kelly Kraskopf and Amber Cox, "We got to tell the USA Network something." They keep asking me, and she's out with the back. And then we get to today, and let's deal with today. Stephanie White. That answer didn't sound like a coach that has a great passion or relationship, or she's indifferent to Caitlin Clark. Your best player, the woman driving all the ticket sales, is out indefinitely, and Stephanie White gives an unemotional, quick, concise answers that, to me, just like Stephanie White's over it. Stephanie White doesn't want to have to answer a bunch of questions about it.
Then we get to today, Stephanie White's press conference, and listen to the tone. Your best player, the woman driving all the ticket sales, is out indefinitely with a back injury. This should warrant some emotion, some concern, some detailed explanation about the medical evaluation, the treatment plan, the timeline for return. Instead, Stephanie White gives quick, concise, unemotional answers, like she's reading from a script, like she's over it, like she doesn't want to answer a bunch of questions about Caitlin Clark. Compare that to how other coaches handle star player injuries. They show passion. They express frustration about the situation. They talk about how much they'll miss that player's contribution. Stephanie White sounded indifferent, and that indifference tells you everything about where this relationship actually is.
What are the problems that she had with Stephanie White? What do you think they are? It's about her shot selection, the way she plays defense. All right, you think the next coach aren't going to have those same issues? The next coach going to say, "Hey, we're going to get these other 4 women to play defense. You just come do your thing." So it's when when the people who back her, let me be clear about this. When the people who are clearly on her side and care about nothing else except what's best for Caitlin, all right? If you say that she's got a problem with Stephanie White and what Stephanie White's doing, you're saying she's not coachable. And I'm not ready to say that about her. But she can't go to Los Angeles and not play defense. She can't go to Los Angeles and just take ill-advised shots. I mean, we always talk about the logo step back threes she takes. She's shooting 20-some% on those shots. There's another question that haven't been asked, and you're in that.
Charles raises the critical question. What are the actual issues between Caitlin and Stephanie? Shot selection, defensive effort, the way she plays. And here's the problem. The next coach is going to have those same concerns. You can't go to Los Angeles and not play defense. You can't just take ill-advised shots and expect a different coach to say, we'll get these other 4 women to play defense. You just do your thing. That's not how professional basketball works. But here's where I disagree with Charles. When the people backing Caitlin point out these issues with Stephanie White, they're not saying she's uncoachable. They're saying the coaching approach isn't working. And there's a difference.
Caitlin Clark's show. She needs to tell the agent what she wants done. It's a concept as old as anything in time. And she's, as a woman, perhaps, and wanting to get along with everybody and not be the bad guy, she might be a bad boss. And I don't like Erin Kane. I think she chose the wrong agent. She needs to get a male agent. But she made this decision. She made the choice to be represented by Erin Kane. And so she's getting the direction and leadership that she's either allowing or is too timid to give proper direction.
I have to totally agree there with you. We said this last year in regards to Caitlin Clark not standing up for herself. There becomes a time as an athlete of her stature, you have to speak up. You cannot continue to get bullied not only by opposing players, but by the same organization that cut your checks. Without you, there is no tickets being sold. Without you, ain't nobody buying no hot dog. Ain't nobody coming from Ireland or Cali or any one of these places to come see you.
People flying over from St. Louis. It's because of Caitlin Clark. But go ahead, Charles.
Here we go again. It's always somebody else's fault when it's dealing with Caitlin. It's always. I mean, now we're going to blame the agent. It's the agent. The other players play bad defense too. The other players took a bad shot. I mean, it's always somebody else's fault when you're dealing with her, and it's just mind-boggling. And I tell you what. As a coach, yeah, you would get tired of that. I mean, there's got to be some accountability here. Caitlin Clark, I almost call her Caitlin White, Jason. You got to stop it. Caitlin Clark is the biggest star in the WNBA. There's no question about that, all right? Now, personally, do I think some concessions need to be made between the coach and the player? Yeah, I'm on Caitlin's side here. But I saw those concessions being made in the game the other night on offense. And those concessions were, you know what? Because Caitlin is saying, okay, Stephanie White, you won a national championship. You did this. You know, you passed a little bit more than I did. But you didn't have the offensive game I did. And she's right. So let's compromise a little bit. And the way Stephanie White, the way I can see her compromising is she took her off the ball. Okay, Kelsey, you're going to have to handle this ball, son. All right? You handle this ball. Let's set some picks for Caitlin. Now, when we set picks and we're in the half court, you feel free to shoot it. Everybody's expecting, so forth. It's the shots where you're dribbling up the court and nobody touches the ball. You've been playing defense for 20 seconds. You coming up the court, nobody touches the ball, and while you're running to your spots, you look up in the air and somebody just shot one from 30 feet. It's deflating. And no coaches want to see that. When she takes that shot, it absolutely has to go in. All right. It just deflates the team. But I saw Stephanie White making some concessions. Well, I've seen it the last couple of games. All right. Because Caitlin Clark can score. She's a big league scorer. It'd be foolish to have her playing the point all night long and telling her not to shoot. So the way you remedy that is you get her off the ball, son. Hey, the Detroit Pistons used to get Isaiah off the ball when they wanted him to start going. Hey, let's put it in Joe's hands. That's what you do. You don't give it to your point guard and say, okay, go shoot it. You get them off the ball because you got to keep everybody else involved. You get them off the ball. Hey, and guess what, John? I don't know if you noticed this, but she took nothing but really good threes that last game.
Yeah.
And she shot a high percentage. She's not Caitlin Clark is a great shooter who takes bad shots. That's why her percentage is low. It ain't like she can't shoot. If Caitlin Clark took good shots from the three-point line, hell, she might shoot 50% from the three-point line. She is deadly out there. But Stephanie White is strong in her convictions. And I'll tell you something else, man. Stephanie White didn't just show up and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. Everybody in that building is on board because they wouldn't give Stephanie White the green light to go out there and coach that way. Stephanie doesn't have that kind of power. I've watched women in this WNBA. I've watched some of the best coaches there is get fired year after year after year. So Stephanie White is doing what she's been told to do as a coach. Here's what you're coming in here to do. And there's some friction to it. And it doesn't look like there's 100% buy-in. You got people who actually buy in and you have people who comply. And what Caitlin Clark is doing, she's complied. She's going along with it, but she hadn't bought in yet. No. And there's the problem.
Look at what Stephanie White has actually done. She took Caitlin off the ball, put it in Kelsey Mitchell's hands, set screens for Caitlin in the half court. That's a compromise. That's an adjustment. And when Caitlin plays within that system, when she takes good shots off ball screens instead of pulling from the logo in transition, she shoots 50% from three. She's a great shooter who takes bad shots. That's why her percentage is low. But here's what Charles is seeing that a lot of people miss. Stephanie White didn't just show up and decide to coach this way. Everybody in that building is on board. The front office gave her the green light. They wouldn't let her coach like this if they didn't support it. Kelly Krauskopf hired Stephanie specifically to implement this system. This isn't Stephanie going rogue. This is organizational philosophy, and that creates a massive problem. Because if the issue is systemic, if it's not just Stephanie but the entire organizational approach, then Caitlin has two choices: buy in completely or demand out. There's no middle ground. Compliance isn't enough. Stephanie White needs buy-in. And what we're seeing from Caitlin is compliance without buy-in. She's going along with it, but she hasn't fully committed. And that's why there's friction. Now let's talk about the media availability issue. Wednesday night, after everything that happened, the media asked for Caitlin Clark at the post-game press conference. They got Kelsey Mitchell and Monique Billings instead. And yes, Kelsey scored 30 points. But the media didn't want Kelsey because she was the favorite player. They wanted Caitlin because she's the story. She's always the story. And she wasn't there. Here's how it works. The media requests specific players. You can be certain they requested Caitlin Clark. And the Fever said no. Why? Because if your star player has a legitimate back injury that forced her out of the game, you make her available. She can sit there, explain what happened, describe the pain, talk about the treatment plan. Athletes do this all the time, but they didn't put her in front of microphones. And there's only one reason you don't do that. You don't know what she's going to say. You don't know how angry she is. You don't know if she'll maintain the company line. It's like a lawyer learns the first day of law school. Don't ask a question in court if you don't already know the answer. Don't put your client on the stand if you don't know what they'll say. The Fever didn't put Caitlin up there because they had no idea what would come out of her mouth. And that tells you the temperature in that locker room was volcanic. This is going to play out exactly like last year. Caitlin will disappear. No press conferences, no media availability. Maybe one brief statement at some point, but mostly silence. And we'll keep wondering when she's coming back, what's really happening, how bad is the injury. Michael Jordan never did this. When he got hurt, he made himself available throughout the recovery. He held press conferences. Here's where I am. Here's the timeline. Here's what the doctors are saying. He stayed connected to the media and the fans. Caitlin Clark just vanishes, and the Fever enable it. Now here's what nobody wants to say out loud. There's a real chance we've seen Caitlin Clark in an Indiana Fever uniform for the last time this season. Not because the back injury is that severe, but because the relationship with Stephanie White is that broken. And when you combine a legitimate injury with an untenable coaching situation, you get the perfect excuse to shut it down. Rest, recover, reevaluate everything in the off-season. Jon thinks there's a 10% chance she gets traded before Saturday's game. I think it's higher than that. Because this is the perfect time to do it. She's injured, the team is struggling, the explanation is built in. We wanted to give Caitlin a fresh start in a situation where she can compete for a championship while recovering from this back issue. It writes itself. And if it doesn't happen in the next 10 days, then Caitlin needs to make a decision. Come back, Buy into Stephanie's system completely and see how it plays out. Or put pressure on the front office. Tell them this isn't working. Tell them the situation is toxic. Tell them to make the trade. But here's the thing that makes this so complicated. Her agent, Aaron Kane, and I'm going to say something that's going to make people uncomfortable. If Caitlin was represented by Rich Paul, by Clutch Sports, by someone with real power and leverage in professional basketball, this situation never gets to this point. A powerful agent doesn't let negative stories dominate the narrative. A powerful agent doesn't let their clients sit in an uncomfortable situation for this long. A powerful agent forces the organization's hand, but your agent works for you. You don't work for your agent, and that's the lesson Caitlin needs to learn. Her agent does what Caitlin allows or directs. If Aaron Kane isn't being aggressive enough, if she's not forcing the issue, if she's not protecting Caitlin's interests above everything else, that's because Caitlin hasn't demanded it. And maybe that's because Caitlin, like a lot of women, doesn't want to be the bad guy. Doesn't want to be the difficult client, doesn't want to force confrontation, but sometimes you have to be the bad guy. Sometimes you have to be Tony Montana. There go the bad guy. Own it, demand what you need, force the uncomfortable conversations. Because here's the reality. Without Caitlin Clark, there are no ticket sales. Nobody's flying in from Ireland, nobody's driving from St. Louis, nobody's buying hot dogs at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The entire economic engine of that franchise runs on her. And she needs to understand that power and use it. The Fever have created a situation where their generational talent, their franchise player, their entire reason for relevance, is sitting in a locker room fuming while the GM and president scramble to contain the damage. That's organizational malpractice, and it stems from treating Caitlin like she should be grateful to be there instead of recognizing that they should be grateful to have her. Stephanie White has a decent resume, but she's not Pat Summitt, she's not Gino Auriemma. She hasn't earned the right to be this rigid. She hasn't done the groundwork to get Caitlin fully on board. Some of that is probably Caitlin being stubborn. Some of that is Stephanie selling a system that doesn't maximize Caitlin's unique talents. But all of it is fixable if both sides want to fix it. The question is whether they do. And based on Wednesday night, based on the body language, based on the 12-minute silence, based on Stephanie's indifferent press conference today, I don't think they want to fix it anymore. I think both sides are done. Caitlin's done being told to play a certain way that doesn't feel natural. Stephanie's done dealing with a player who won't fully buy in. The front office is done managing the tension, and the media is done pretending everything is fine. So what happens next? Either Caitlin comes back in 2 weeks, fully commits to Stephanie's system, and we see if they can make this work. Or the Fever make a trade. Send her somewhere she wants to be. Get value in return while they still can. Start fresh with a coach and roster that are fully aligned. Because this current situation isn't sustainable. You can't have your franchise player and your head coach in an undeclared war. You can't have the GM and president running into the locker room to manage crises. You can't go 12 minutes without explaining where Caitlin Clark went. The Fever have a choice. Fix this relationship or end it. There's no middle ground. And based on everything we've seen, I think they're closer to ending it than anyone wants to admit. The back injury gives them cover. The timing works. The narrative is ready. All they need is the courage to pull the trigger. So here's my question for you. If you're Caitlin Clark, do you come back and give this one more shot? Or do you tell your agent to force the trade now while you have maximum leverage? Because if you come back and it's still broken, you've lost your window. You've shown you'll accept this situation and nothing changes. But if you force it now, you control your destiny. You get to pick where you land. You get a fresh start with a coach who wants to build around your strengths instead of trying to minimize your weaknesses. What would you do? Drop it in the comments.